Hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This is your host, Thomas Sorry from On the Hot Podcast. Today, this would be episode 97 for you guys today. Of course, this episode will be coming on all four of our platforms: our Instagram account, our Facebook account, our YouTube account, and our Apple Podcast account. So let's dive into the first segment of episode 97. I'll be giving my summary on UFC 287. I'll be giving my summary on the co-main event and the main event that transpired in the world of the UFC this past weekend. So 287, I thought was a pretty good pay-per-view card from top to bottom. I'll be giving my co-main event thoughts. So in the co-main event that we saw in UFC 287, we saw Gilbert Burns successfully beat George Masvidal by unanimous decision in a 3-round fight. Burns did a good job frustrating George Masvidal, I believe, in this fight from the beginning of the fight all the way to the end of the fight, which really didn't leave any discussions or any doubts of who the true winner was by the judges at the scorecards. I thought Burns really frustrated Masvidal. You could see after the second round, with 5 minutes remaining left in the fight, George Masvidal knew that his UFC career was coming to an end. He was frustrated walking to his corner, and I believe the last 5 minutes of that fight, he just enjoyed the moment that he had left that he was going to spend in his UFC career. I thought that this was a good way for George Masvidal to walk away fighting for the final time in his UFC career in his hometown of Miami, Florida. He flirted with the idea all week long during press conferences and during interviews that his time in the UFC is almost up. And this loss is a perfect way to me for him to ride off into the sunset. He's already 38 years old. He's finishing his career, his MMA career, which he started in 2003. So when you do the math on it, it's been a 20-year career and in total of all for an MMA career for George Masvidal. That's huge in this brutal sport and mixed martial arts. So kudos to George Masvidal for finishing his 20-year career. Holds the record for the fastest knockout in UFC history with 5 seconds. Who could ever forget that flying knee that changed his life and changed his MMA career for the rest of his life? He went on, and after that flying knee strike, he went on an unprecedented run in UFC, a 4-year run that can never be forgotten in the history books of UFC. Definitely was a box office attraction in the UFC. And you cannot forget about his huge main event clash with Nate Diaz in Madison Square Garden at UFC 244. That was an instant classic, which George Masvidal walked away as the winner over Nate Diaz in that fight. But George Masvidal definitely was one of the biggest attractions, definitely one of the highest paid UFC fighters over the last few years, and it's a good way for him to go out. And then in the main event, we saw Israel Adesanya defeat Alex Pereira by KO in the second round to regain the middleweight championship. Throughout all the combat fights that were going out and during the weekend, whether it was in the sport of boxing or whether it was the sport of UFC, this Israel and Alex Pereira fight was the best combat fight all weekend long. Even though it was only 2 rounds, the fight, in my opinion, was badass, and it had a great monumental finish by Israel Adesanya by having the great knockout and the icing on the cake, his little victory celebration. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a meme. Definitely a moat. However they do it in Fortnite, where you can have a celebration after collecting the victory, I wouldn't be surprised they add that. But it was the 4th time for the charm for Israel Adesanya to finally beat Alex Pereira. It took him they fought 4 total times, not all in the UFC, but Israel lost to Pereira in kickboxing and lost the UFC championship to him last November. So Israel Adesanya got his revenge Saturday night by knocking him out. During this fight, I feared that the fight was going to go in the favor of Alex Pereira, the way how the fight was going on. Alex Pereira started off very strong, very confident, and he delivered a lot of leg strikes that was knocking Israel Adesanya off of his game. And you could tell that leg kicks were totaling up on his body from round 1 all the way to the end of the fight. Israel started firing back in the late of the second round. Ended the fight with his fast hands. I do believe he's one of the best pure strikers in UFC today. And you saw that when he turned the fight around, when he started landing his combination strikes, sent Alex Pereira to the canvas, and the ending of it was the hammer strike fist onto Alex Pereira's face that left him cold and knocked out on that canvas. And we saw Israel Adesanya regain the middleweight championship in the UFC. I do believe he's one of the greatest middleweight champions in UFC history. He's ran through that division for a very long time now. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's in the future for Israel Adesanya. I know you guys haven't really heard much UFC, but don't worry. I know about UFC. I like boxing more. Everybody knows boxing is one of my favorite sports. But UFC, it's very entertaining as well. So me and the guys will produce more UFC content for you guys. But those are my thoughts on UFC 287 pay-per-view card.